Hello, beautiful humans. I'm Gemma Drone, and today I wanted to talk more about the grieving process that comes up during the awakening process, because the energy of grief is one of the more subtle energies of the awakening process, and we may not even realize what it is or that we're experiencing it until either it gets really strong or we go deep into that feeling and realize that it's a very deep grief, a very deep sense of loss that we're feeling. And because awakening really is a death process, grieving is inevitable, unfortunately. It's just a part of the process because there is so much that we're letting go of. There's so much that is dying. There's so much that we're losing, whether we're losing it voluntarily or involuntarily. There's still a deep grief that comes with that. And it's grieving the old parts of ourselves. It's grieving the old way of life. It's grieving what we thought to be true and now realize isn't true, and we have to let go of it, whether we like it or not. And it's really just grieving everything that we're leaving behind. And this grieving is a really important part of the process because it's honoring where we came from and how we got to this point where we are right now. And grieving really is all about that honoring and that recognition so that we can let it go and it can transform into that higher next level incarnation of whatever it is. And so when we grieve consciously, the parts of us that are dying, the egoic parts of us that have run the show for so long, when we allow ourselves to grieve that, then it's easier to let it go. And I believe that the ego also loosens its grip a bit when we go through that grieving process, because the ego gets that honoring and that recognition that everything, even illusionary selves, aim for and ache for, and the ego is no different. So the ego tends to kind of loosen its grip when we're really conscious with the process of what's dying, and we honor it and we grieve it and we let it go with grace. Now, there's so many layers to this grief that comes in. It's not just the grief of losing the old self, losing parts of our old life. It's often the grief of losing loved ones, losing family members who have, no understanding of what we're going through and no patience for it, and possibly, either we've separated from them because they're so toxic, or they've separated from us because they just don't get us anymore. And so there's definitely grieving of the loss of loved ones. And there is a deeper grieving that comes in once we really see through not just our own personal lies, but the collective lies that we've been handed, and we see the destruction that's been happening because of the lies that we were told, because of the fact that we've all chosen to believe this illusion. And so the grieving often gets deeper when we see what we've done to each other and to the planet and to all the living beings on the planet. And so that's often a whole new level of grief that comes in. And it's often met with a lot of anger or judgment on our part, because suddenly we see different. We see how things could have been better and how they could be better. And it ignites a sort of anger in us. And if we're not careful, that can turn into judgment. And so being able to harness that anger towards very conscious action is super valuable. But having compassion for those around us and for ourselves is always key. So feeling that deeper grief is one of the hardest things, because it is such a collective grief. And this often comes in and we have no idea what it is. We just feel this huge sadness. And I remember a period in my life where every time I got on my friend's massage table, I just cried, and I had no idea what I was crying about. And then after a while, it became very clear that I was grieving the collective destruction of our planet, the collective pain and trauma of the human race, and all of it. And it seems like so many of us, as we awaken, as we go through the process of transformation, and as we kind of realize our roles as, whether you want to call yourself a light worker, a way shower, or just someone who's helping to lift the frequency of the planet, it seems to be that one of the things that we have to do is to transmute some of the grief of the planet. And so that's another thing that you may be experiencing, is that you are transmuting that collective grief. And so again, honor that process, honor yourself, and reach out for help when you need it. Whether it's from your guides, family members, whether you need to go get a massage, whatever it is, ask for that help. And recently, the collective grief has seemed to have risen to a whole new level as things get crazier and crazier on this planet. And it's so intense because there is a whole new way of seeing. Like we see a lot more clearly the lies that we've been told. And in the same way, those lies are still perpetuated over and over and over again. So it causes such a huge new level of frustration in us. But collectively, we are grieving. We're grieving what has happened over the past year and a half. We're grieving all of the conflicts all over the planet. And we're grieving the stupidity of humankind. And, it's good to recognize that and to honor that and to not get lost in it. To know that this is part of a bigger plan. It is absolutely part of this planetary awakening that we are experiencing right now. And it is a huge death process that is essential, unfortunately, for this evolution that we're experiencing. And so, again, allowing yourself to grieve, honoring the process, and having compassion for yourself and the world. And so the other part of the awakening process, I said that it is a death process, and it absolutely is all the way through, from beginning to end. It is a death process. However, it is also a birth process happening simultaneously. Often the death, well, not necessarily, because time is not linear. I was going to say often the death part starts first, and that is often how we see it. And then there's a rebirth happening while there's still dying happening. But it can happen in any order, in any form. We can have a rebirth experience that sparks our awakening, and then the death of the old comes in because there's no other way. So at the same way that we have to honor the death process and the grieving process, we also have to honor the birth process. And so when you feel yourself getting lost in the grief, getting lost in all of the confusion and all of the chaos of the world, or in your own personal world, in your own emotions and things that you're processing, when you feel lost in that grief, look for what is being reborn in you. Look for what it is that is starting to poke up out of the soil or starting to bloom. And when you focus your energy on what is being reborn in you, what is being reborn collectively, then you give life to whatever that is. You feed it with your energy. And it also takes life inside of you. So it enlivens us, and it shifts us out of that deep grief into a place of hope, into a place of deep knowing and deep connection with our truth. So I just encourage you to make that switch. Feel the grief, honor it, move through the process and look for what's being reborn. And then honor that. Feed that in any way that you possibly can, because that new life is what this is all about. So I'm sending you all so much love for all of you that are feeling this crazy grief, that are going through this process, whether personally or just feeling it collectively. And also I want to remind you, if you feel stuck in this process or any part of the awakening process and you would like some more help, then please reach out to me, send me a private message, let me know what's going on, and we can set up some time to talk to see if the work that I do with my clients would be a good fit for you. I also have a new group starting in about 2 weeks. It's a small group spiritual mentorship program. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I can tell you more about that. So sending you all so much love. And if you have any questions, please leave them here in the comments. And I'll see you in the Facebook group. Mwah. Love you all.